Hi everybody and welcome to the Walker's Guide, and today is the Walker's Guide from Fyfield to St Botolphs. We're working today off of map 183. This is the Explorer map of Chelmsford and the Rodings, and this walk will be on the Walker's Guide website. So that's where we are, that's where we're going. Let's grab our stuff and head on. So we're starting the walk at Fyfield Village Hall, which has a small car park that's free to park in. Just don't take the mickey and park in that overnight. There are signs asking you not to do that. It's a lovely little sports field with a small play area for the kids, and in the summer it's heaving with footballers. There's also dog poo bins, and it's a perfect place to walk your dog. The start of the walk is located at grid reference TL 568067. From the car park we walk down the hill towards the trees in the bottom corner, past a small school and out onto the road. So after leaving the small park we cross over the River Roding and take a little minute to look at the ducks who are enjoying their time on this lovely bit of river. Here it widens out with Mill House nearby and the road next to us. Be careful here because in the winter it can get quite slippy on the bridge. After crossing the river, it's onto the road some more on the footpath and up to St Nicholas's Church. This is a 15th century church that in the 18th or 19th century was coated with a layer of cement. It's a lovely little church and we will visit it again at some other point on another walk. But today we're just walking by. After walking past the church, up to the end of Cannon's Lane where you see a small post box on an island, we then cross over into the grounds of Fyfield Hall, which has a footpath running through a private garden, so please stick to the path when we get there. When reaching Fyfield Grange, there's a small footpath fenced off to the left of the main gates. Follow through there. We don't record while walking through someone's private property in respect of their privacy, so you'll join me again on the other side of the gardens. So after walking through the Grange, we met with three options. We got a path to the left, a path to the right, and a path straight on. We're going to take the path straight on. The path to the left goes over a small concrete bridge. We'll visit that on a different walk. And the path to the right we'll see later on. You do find some of the more interesting wildlife in random places in Essex. So we've just walked past an area with some Jacob sheep, and at the top of an old oak tree we spotted a cormorant alongside the River Roding. Beautiful birds, almost all black, but interestingly they're not waterproof. So when they dive into water, they have to come out and dry themselves off, which is what he's doing. He's getting all the heat out of the sun, warming up his black feathers and driving off all the moisture. Beautiful bird. So reaching the end of the path next to the paddock, we turn left to follow the yellow marker down to the riverside. This hedge is absolutely alive with wildlife, especially the small birds, the blue tits, and in this case the large bird, the cormorant. So, this is the River Roding. It's a relatively fast-flowing river at this stage. The River Roding is interesting because its name actually comes from a Saxon trader who travelled up the Thames and then followed a tributary to his new land. And that tributary was the Roding, although it wasn't called the Roding at the time because it was named after Hora or Hura or Hara or Hora or Hohra or however you want to pronounce his name, because I don't speak Old English or Saxon, so I don't actually know how it should be pronounced. But he gave his name to the area, and from that came the name for the river, but also for about 9 villages, actually the largest group of similarly named villages in the country. You've got Leiden Roding, White Roding, Margaret Roding, Abbess Roding, Althorpe Roding, Beecham Roding, which is actually spelt Beauchamp, named after Beauchamp family, but is known as Beecham locally, amongst others. And we're actually going to visit some of these in the future videos. But today we're looking at the river, and as I say, it's a lovely little river that flows down through the countryside of Essex out to the River Thames at Barking Creek. After crossing the river, step off the bridge and walk basically straight ahead of you, around, following the path past the 3 large willows towards the gap in the hedge marked by a yellow triangle pointing out towards the road. After crossing the road, head up towards the footpath sign and then stop and look at the corner of the field. Across from you, you'll see a number of houses, and in between the houses there are some trees. That's where the footpath actually goes. The footpath sign sends you off into the corner, but it's straight across the field towards the houses. We've been here just after the farmers ploughed the field, so the footpath isn't visible, but that's where it goes. After exiting the gap in the houses, you're going to find yourself on a relatively busy road. This is the reason the walk runs the way it does. It's essential when you're walking on the road, you face oncoming traffic. It's so that you can see what's coming towards you, and what's coming towards you sees you first. Stay facing oncoming traffic unless you are going round a tight corner. Thankfully, this section that we're walking on the road isn't that long. We go past the farm supply shop and slightly round the corner. But be warned, this is a fast road. Cars do come down here at some speed. When you can stay on the verge, do stay on the verge. Once you actually start walking on the road, you'll see the footpath sign pretty soon. It's not far at all. After coming off the road and you squeeze through the hedge, at the moment we're filming, it's not had a trim back, so there's a growth across the gap. So just be careful, it's quite spiky. After squeezing through the hedge, you're going to look to your left and you'll see 2 oak trees with a very clearly defined footpath leading towards them. That's the route we're going to take. Do not go straight on as you walk through the gap, because I don't know where you'll end up. Because we're not going that way, we're heading up towards the 2 oak trees on the hill. After walking along next to the hedgerow, with the hedgerow on your left, you come to a small bridge leading to woodland. We're going to cross this bridge and head into the woodland, but keep your eyes peeled. You might see deer in here, you might see hare. If you come in the right time of the winter, you might even see a weasel or a stoat. The paths through the woodland are quite obvious. Stick to the main path, goes through the woodland. It's only a small patch of woodland, so don't worry too much. And you may see deer tracks, and in front you're going to see a footpath sign that points right and one that points straight onto another bridge. We're going to head down to that bridge and out onto the field. Straight ahead, you'll now see the church. That's where we're aiming for, so we need to head for that. It's always somewhat unnerving when you walk across a field that's planted and there's no obvious footpath where people have walked before. But if the OS map shows the footpath on it, that's where the footpath is. Sometimes farmers don't cut the footpath for a while after the crop started growing. Sometimes they allow people just to push their way through the crop. Be confident you're in the right, and it's always better to say sorry, this is where the footpath is shown, than to walk all the way around the edge of the field, and actually that can cause more problems. Farmers generally know where the footpaths on their land are and will be happy that you've actually tried to follow them. After crossing the field, you'll see a hedge. We're going to take the path to the right of the hedge as it leads us down towards the church. Through the hedge, there isn't actually an opening in the hedge, it's not like we're just pushing through, and into the churchyard. This is the raison d'etre for our walk. This is our target for the day. This is where we've come to visit. This is St Botolphs Church. Now, St Botolph is a very English saint. He was actually born up in East Anglia to Saxon parents. He was a Saxon in the 7th century. He then went over to France to a monastery to learn to become a monk, and then came back to England. His brother Adolf also went with him. He didn't come back to England. He actually became a Dutch bishop. But he came back to England and eventually set up a monastery up in Suffolk, it's believed. It's also discussed it could be up in Boston. Boston was literally Botolph's town. It's exactly the same place that Boston in Massachusetts gets its name from. It's named after Boston, Lincolnshire. So there's multiple Botolphs churches. There's actually 3 in London, or there was until the Great Fire of London. And we've got this beautiful example here. This is a 14th and 15th century example of a church. There have been later additions to it, but it actually sits on the site of a church that was at least the 13th century, because internally there are parts that are from the 13th century, including a bowl or a sink that was used in the consecration of the bread and wine. I believe it was used when the priests washed their hands, and that goes from back to at least the 13th century, pre-Reformation. But all in, it's a beautiful church. It's really interestingly built, but its location is really odd. It's in the middle of nowhere. Supposedly, it was meant to be built at the bottom of the hill, nearer to the houses. Let's go and have a look and see why the church was built here and not at the bottom of the hill. So, why was this church built here in particular, rather than somewhere else? Well, its legend is it's all down to this rock here. The legend goes that originally the villagers were going to build their church down in the valley, which is over there. But they came across this lovely piece of rock, lovely stone. They said, we want to use this. It's a great bit of rock. We won't have to transport it far. We'll just drag it from where it is at the top of the hill down into the valley. Then we'll cut it up and we'll make it into blocks. One day they did exactly that. They dragged it from here down into the valley and then left it to the next day to cut it up into blocks. However, overnight, it transported itself back up to the top of the hill. Undeterred, the villagers did that again. They dragged it from the top of the hill down into the valley to cut up into blocks, left it overnight, and the next day it transported itself back up to the top of the hill. So the villagers decided, rather than dragging it back down the hill and trying again, they'll just move the church to the top of the hill. I have a few issues with that. One, if they so want to use this piece of stone in the building of the church, why is it not built into the church? Two, you don't build churches, generally speaking, in valleys. You generally build them on top of hills where they can be seen by people. They're a focal point. So you build them up high so people can see them. This stone has other history attached to it. Some history's interesting, some's true. This, I don't think so. Up until 1984, this stone was laying flat on the ground, and it was stood up by a group calling themselves the Mark Stone Liberation Front. And they dug a hole and stuck it in the ground. Now, the reason they did that is there was a theory at the time that there was an ancient trackway marked by stones that went from Grimes Graves in Norfolk all the way down to Hertfordshire. So you could travel and take flint that was commonly dug up at Grimes Graves in Norfolk, which is some of the best flint you're going to find. It was wanted for axes, for spearheads, for knives, and drag it down to Hertfordshire where it could be traded easier onto the Ridgeway, which was a big track that went across the country. There's a few issues with that as well. One, most of these stones are found in people's back gardens where they were probably used as rockery stones. Two, they're pudding stone, they were meant to be. Pudding stone is a very particular stone. It's made of lots of little flint pebbles that are all crushed together with effectively what was mud at the time, but it's turned to rock. And when you split it, it splits and you get all the lovely edges of the pebbles cut. This is sarsen. This is not what the trail was made of. This is, however, the same type of stone that Stonehenge is made out of. It's found occasionally in Essex, which is why it's been used to build the church. Your next directions are to walk out through the white gates or round them and head off down the path towards the road. After leaving the church and heading down the roadway, we turn right down a small path that's next to the stream. Follow this path along, you go over a bridge and through a little bit of woodland next to the ditch and keep going until you reach the road. At the road, cross over and you'll see a sign a little bit further up beyond the driveway to the old rectory. Follow that footpath around the old rectory and down towards a wooden bridge. But hold on, don't cross the wooden bridge. We carry on the bank of the ditch down into the small woodland we see ahead of us. So after not crossing the bridge and following the path down, we now get to cross two bridges. Cross the first bridge into the woodland and then immediately turn right to cross the second bridge out of the woodland and across the field. After following the path around the bank of the ditch after crossing the field, you'll come to another ditch which we have to cross. It's actually just a field boundary. It can be quite moist, so take your time, look where you're stepping and cross onto a lovely piece of well-maintained grass. When you reach the yellow marker place with two marking circles on it, one pointing to a straight line around the field and one pointed diagonally across, follow the diagonal across the field. You're aiming for the corner of the woods. There's some tall silver birches, aim for those. It is a well-walked path, but because it's in grassland, it doesn't always show up very well. When you get there, you'll see there is another post and you're in the right place. If you do follow around the edge of the field, which is fine, but just keep going past the kissing gate, again, towards the silver birch in the corner of the field. After walking through the woodland, you end up in a small car park. Follow the path to the right, out of the car park and onto the driveway. We're going to walk down the driveway to reach the road. Once you reach the end of the driveway, turn left and stay on that side of the road until you reach the bridge. Although you're walking technically on the wrong side of the road, you're on a tight corner, so cars coming the other way won't be able to see you if you're on the facing oncoming traffic. Walk across the bridge, crossing over when it's safe and sensible to do so, and then walk down the footpath next to the small river. There is a stile, but there's not a lot of point to it. But if you want to climb over the stile, feel free. When walking across the field, just stay with the path. There is no other paths going anywhere until you reach the woodland. At the woodland, again, there's a very clearly marked yellow post with a orange arrow on it. Just follow that through the woodland and out the other side. So after walking through the little patch of woodland, you end up on a very small road. You'll see there's a ford sign. We're going to walk down towards the ford. Don't worry, it's nearly always dry until you see a footpath sign in front of you, which we're going to ignore. We're actually going to keep on walking down to the end of the road where there's another footpath. We will visit the footpath that goes across the road here in a future video, but today we're walking on straight. So as we get towards the end of this little road, we're going to head left through a wooden gate. Sometimes the main gate is open, sometimes you need to use the small side gate. Please make sure you shut the gate. It is a private garden that the footpath happens to pass through. Again, we won't be videoing through here in respect of the people who live in the house. So once you've walked through the garden, you'll come out onto a farm track that shows a footpath left and right, but also straight on. We're taking the straight on footpath, which actually goes left around the farm track, but then we meet another footpath that goes left, right again, just the other side of the hedge. And at this point we go right. You're going to follow the Essex Way. It shows 2 poppies on a white arrow. That's the route we're going to take. Effectively, when you get to there, you go turn right, aiming for the small metal bridge over the stream, and then it's straight on across the field towards the house with the hedge round it. After crossing the field, follow the path round the back of the house and carry on going until you reach another metal bridge. You'll probably get fed up at the sight of these metal bridges before long, but they are great bridges, they're very strong, and they are fine to cross. You're going to cross the bridge and then turn left. Ignore the road sign, which tells you that Fyfield is on the turn to the right. That's not where we're going. I mean, we are going to Fyfield, but we're going to carry on the road for a short way. Again, there's a tight little corner up ahead. So walk on the wrong side of the road with your back to oncoming traffic to start with until you can see clearly round the corner. The last thing you want is a car that can't see you coming, come around the corner at any sort of speed and taking your legs out. It's like lots of these rules. For every rule there is an exception. The exception here is when you can't see around a corner. You want to be on the outside of corners but facing oncoming traffic where possible. Stay on the road. The turning that we want will be on the right hand side of the road. When you cross the field, go through the fenced off section behind the garden and to the crossing point on the road. When we reach this section, we're going to look left, and that's where we're heading. We're going to turn left and head up. Stay on the left hand side because the corner is quite tight up ahead and cars won't be able to see you. But if you look on the right hand side now, you will see the finger post where we're going next to the big oak tree. Again, this is through someone's garden, so just be respectful. So after walking down through the garden, you're going to reach some tall leylandii. Stay with them, so you're walking with them on your left, until you get to the end of the path of leylandii where you'll see another entrance. Go through that entrance and straight on. We're heading back towards Fyfield now. We're not far away from the car park. You should now be walking through a tunnel of trees. There's a field behind on one side and a paddock behind on your left. Keep walking through. You're going to realise where you are in a minute. We're on our way back to Fyfield Grange. Having walked through the tunnel of Blackthorn, cross across the drive and follow the orange post and pointer, that will take you back down to Fyfield Range where we were right at the start of the walk. Obviously this last section is basically the start of the walk in reverse. So turn left when you reach the path and then follow it back to the road, past the church and back to the car park. Well, that rounds up the walk, and we'd like to say thank you for joining us, and we hope you enjoyed it. If you did, then please like, subscribe, click the bell that lets you know when we put another video up. If you want further information on this walk or any of the other walks that we've done or may do, then please check out the Walker's Guide website. The link is in the description box below. If you haven't enjoyed it, well, please tell us how we can improve. If there's somewhere you'd like us to visit, a walk you want us to do, again, let us know in the comments down below. And with that, we'd like to say thank you for coming, and we'll see you on the trails next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Saucin'.
Sarsen.
You're a saucin'.